Hi, my name is Bill Adler. I'm the co-author with Dan Charnas of Def Jam Recordings, the first 25 years of the last great record label.
Cool.
I ended up writing this book, not least because once upon a time, I worked at Def Jam, and the era was 1984 to 1990. I started working with Russell at his Rush Artist Management as the in-house publicist in June of 1984. And the very first Def Jam records that Rick and Russ put out together, namely LL Cool J's I Need a Beat, came out in September of 1984. So I was there at the beginning, and I stayed until March or so of 1990. You know, it was not the idea. I wish I could claim the idea for this book for myself, but I can't. I think the book was Lauren Wurzer's idea. She works for Def Jam Enterprises, and it's, you know, her job to dream up new projects on which the Def Jam logo can ride. And she's done a variety of things along this line and along these lines. And I think it was her idea to do a book, and I think she sold it into Rizzoli. And then after the deal was cut, she turned to Leor Cohen, and Leor said Bill should write it. So that's how I got involved. It probably took about 2 years from beginning to end to write the book, and I'd kind of not like to find out for sure exactly how long it was, because it's a little embarrassing. But it was a wonderful process. I got to work with, you know, dear friends of mine, Say Adams, who designed the book, and Dan Charnas, who's an old friend, wrote the second half of the book. And you know, I was able to reach out as well to the founders of the label and some of the legendary artists from the early years, guys I worked with back in the day. And everybody was, you know, tremendously cooperative, and everybody was very enthused to work on the book. And so that made you know, my job that much easier and more pleasurable. You know, the funny thing about writing the book, the reason that the text in the book is an oral history is because I got such good interviews from these guys. And, you know, I mean, I lived through a lot of this history, and then I've read a lot, and I've written a lot since then. But when I sat down with Rick and Russ and Leor and Adam Horvitz from the Beastie Boys and Chuck D, and asked about some of the seminal events in the early years of Def Jam, everybody was very forthcoming, very articulate, and also everybody didn't agree with what the next guy said. I learned a lot putting this book together, and you know, you might have imagined, I might have imagined that I wouldn't learn so very much, because in fact I did live through it, and you know, I have read about it, and I have, you know, studied the label for years and whatnot. But I did learn a lot, because, you know, the folks I spoke to had new things to say. Also because some of the things, you know, about which these new things were said were you know, events and incidents that were painful at the time, and about which people mostly haven't talked. You know, why did the Beastie Boys leave Def Jam? Why did Rick and Russell split up? You know, nobody's talked too much about these things over the course of years, and so, you know, it was very gratifying to me, and it was illuminating to me to speak to these guys and have them talk about it for the first time. What became clearer to me during the writing of the book was the relationship between Russell and Rick and Leor. That was interesting. And as to, you know, how did Rick and Russ drift apart, and how did each of them feel about it? In retrospect, all of that stuff was new to me, and it was interesting to me.
Cool.
The very early years of hip-hop were not really well documented in terms of photography. If you want pictures of Bambaataa in 1973, you're shit out of luck. They don't exist. Flyers, yes. Photos by a competent photographer, no. By the time let's say this, by the time Def Jam really gets rolling in 1984, there were a number of wonderful photographers around to document this emerging culture and to document the artists. And so, it was my job to know those folks as the publicist for the label. And I saw a photo shot by a woman named Sophie Bramley. Sophie is the woman who invented Yo MTV Raps before it appeared in America. She's a French woman. It turns out that she was here in the Bronx, 1981 through 1983, and she shot the hip hop scene and the great hip hop artists of that era at that time. And the pictures are really revelatory. I mean, it's like a time capsule. She never showed them before. These are photos that are now 30 years old. Wonderful photo. One of the pictures that knocked my socks off is a photo that she shot of young Rick Rubin, a beardless young Rick Rubin at Negril. I'm not sure where he is. And he's literally looking up at Africa Islam. Islam is the DJ that night. And Rick has always given a lot of props to Islam along with Jazzy J, but I never saw a picture of them together. This picture captures that, and we're going to bring it to your viewers, I promise.